So when Rebecca asked me to speak at this session, I tried hard to say no. I worked really hard to say no, but she would not accept no, as some of you folks know that have worked with Rebecca. So I took things from a little different perspective. So I'm not up here talking about JBS. I'm not up here talking about Prestige Farms that I've worked for in the past. Really what I wanted to look at was the perspective of what the veterinarian does within a integrated production system. So it's a little bit different model than what we've talked about so far today. So you're not going to see a lot of decorated slides, that sort of thing. The target audience. So Rebecca talked about how this was sort of targeted towards the younger veterinarians, the new graduates, or students coming in. So just understand that that's kind of the level at which I try to target. And for other folks that are just interested in how integrated veterinary medicine works and kind of how it's set up. So really basic stuff. So what I'm going to go through are some historical perspectives on how veterinarians work within integrated systems, and then how those roles are kind of changing over time. I'm going to talk about the challenges of being a veterinarian in an integrated system. Marlon talks about how great it is. Sometimes it's not all that great. Sometimes there are some struggles within that, and we'll throw it out there and make you aware of it. Sometimes there's conflicts with production. Maybe it doesn't happen in Smithfield. I don't know, Marlon. But the other thing is, when you're in an integrated system, you tend to see the same thing every day. And you don't really get challenged from the outside, so you tend to get tunnel vision, which is a huge problem for some integrated veterinarians. Then we're going to talk about some opportunities for veterinarians in integrated systems, some new specialty type roles that are coming to the forefront today, especially around antibiotics and animal welfare. We're going to talk a little bit about team and culture. So my role, so I've spent time as field veterinarian, I've spent time as head veterinarian, and now I'm in a role of head of operations where I have a veterinary team working for me along with all the production staff. So my perception of the role of the veterinarian in a integrated production system has probably changed, and it's a little bit unique today. So I'll share some of those experiences with you. And then I'll talk about why it truly is fun to work in an integrated system, because there are some tremendously rewarding things that happen in integrated systems that are really neat. And then some future roles that will pop up for veterinarians in the future. So in the real basic form, you got a production system out there. Why would they hire a veterinarian to come to work for them full time? Well, initially it's around, hey, we're moving pigs across state lines. We've got to get them inspected, right? It's a kind of a check the box sort of thing to make sure you don't send diseased animals crossing state lines, just meeting the requirements. We've had a lot of VFD stuff added to the responsibilities of veterinarians over the last couple of years. Incredibly important. I'm not downplaying the importance of that, but it's sort of a cost function. We're not adding a tremendous amount of value in doing VFDs, at least to the production system. We're adding value to food safety, food security, antibiotic use, stewardship, sustainability, but not so much to the production system. And prescription management the exact same way. So you get past the regulatory functions. Those are sort of the cost type things that you kind of have to do. The next service that the veterinarian provides to a production system is really around animal health, and Marlon touched on animal health quite a bit, talking about the antibiotic-free program. But that primary focus for a lot of field veterinarians today is the health of the animals, and that should be one of our main goals, one of the things we work on as veterinarians. But what I want to point out is that there's sort of a transition that you go through your career. You start off as a new graduate, and you talk about the animal. You're talking about that sow in the crate that's not eating, that's got a retained pig, how to treat her, what does she need to get better. So you kind of treat them on the animal level. And then over time, you start talking about herds and farms. And you start understanding the interactions of disease within the herd and the farm. And sooner or later, it took me about 3 or 4 years to figure this out. I was a slow learner. But then you start talking about flows. And Marlon touched on flows a while ago. He said, hey, we can pick a flow of pigs that we can wean them older. They have a better health status because they're all paired to 2 sows. And we can stick them in a better location. So I appreciate you pointing that out, Marlon, because you talked about flow. And then you kind of talked about the system in the region. and controlling what you can control. Even though you've got a lot of farms in really bad locations, you can start selecting the right animals in the right program to go in the right spot to stay healthy to provide a good outcome. And then you're hearing a lot of stuff, especially around African swine fever, which I'm surprised how many people are in here considering that the African swine fever session is going on, which is where I want to be. But now we've got veterinarians talking about not only region, but we're talking about national security, our food security and our food safety on a national level. And we've actually got a lot of leaders now talking about international level health issues. So kind of as you go across your career, you increase your scope and understanding on a larger scale as time goes on. And honestly, your value increases as you go across. I want everybody to understand in an integrated system or in any system, when you move from the animal level up to the regional level, the value you provide back to your employer increases. So just take that into account. And a lot of folks, do we have a pointer, Rebecca? Ah, there we go. I thought that was a record button. And it doesn't work. Very good. So a lot of veterinarians in production systems, they get stuck in this level right here, this herd farm level, and can stay there for many, many, many years. And it's going to one farm, seeing a problem. You know what to do to fix that problem. It's they need this drug, or they need this vaccine, or they need this management change. But not moving to the next level of the flow, understanding that this farm today has this problem. This farm over here next week has a very similar problem. And then the next week, this other farm has the same problem, and tying it all back to the flow of pigs and understanding what's going on within the system to make those things happen. So I would encourage all the young folks, as you think about your experience after graduation and getting into the systems, is to get to this flow level as quickly as possible, because that's where you provide a lot of value back to your employer. So then we're seeing veterinarians today in production roles more than we have in the past. And that's going to continue to increase, I think. And that primary focus is on taking care of pigs, providing good housing, good breeding technique, monitoring farrowing, those types of things. Very, very, very important, and provides tremendous value back to your employer. And then we're seeing a lot of folks getting into animal welfare now. Veterinarians we're not solely responsible for animal welfare. There are a lot of people that are getting degrees in animal welfare, master's degrees in animal welfare management, coming into production systems today. But this is a pretty good fit for veterinarians in the future, because we should be leaders in animal welfare at all times in every role that we do. And there's some opportunities. Every integrated production system is going to have, animal welfare managers, animal welfare directors, things of that nature. So great opportunities there. So I want to talk a little bit about the design of how veterinarians are deployed in an integrated system. And there's really 3 different ways for bigger systems. One is they separate them out by a multiplication pyramid or pod. We're going to describe this with some graphics here. But that's basically taking a system, one flow of pigs, and that belongs to one veterinarian, so they can see the multiplication, they can see the sow farm performance within that flow, the nursery performance, and the finisher performance, and try to tie everything back together. So it gives you the whole picture of the whole flow. Another way it's divided up today, and you see this in quite a few systems, is multiplication is kind of separated for biosecurity concerns. Well, we're going to keep biosecurity really good in multiplication, so we're going to have one veterinarian take care of multiplication. And then we're going to have another veterinarian that's going to be responsible for sow production, because they're really good in the farrowing house, really good at taking care of sows, really good at sow health. And then they hire somebody else and they say, okay, you go out and you take care of wean to finish. Well, then that requires all of those people to communicate on a daily basis or weekly basis to figure out what's going on in one spot, why it's going on, and tying everything back together. It can be very difficult to do. And then probably the most difficult format of deploying veterinary services in a system is a regional approach, where you take veterinarians and you have them scattered down all over the country, and you say, okay, everything within 60 miles is yours. And it may be from 5 different flows, 4 different sow farms, 2 different multiplication systems, and then purchase pigs on the side. And it's very difficult to figure out. So we're going to talk a little bit about this so you understand what I'm saying. So this is a flow-based design here. So you got multiplication, flows down into sow farms, flows down into nurseries and finishers, and they could be weaned to finished barns. There could be 30 sow farms in a pyramid, for example. But you would take one veterinarian, put them over one system, another veterinarian, put them over another system. So it's top to bottom, pretty easy to figure things out. You know, you can see what goes on in multiplication. You can tie it to what goes on in the sow farm. And what you see showing up in the finishing floors, you can figure out what the root cause is, because almost never does the problem manifest where the root cause originates. Almost never. It took me a long time to figure that out. So when you see problems in the finisher, usually it's back here. Sometimes it's back here where the root cause is. So it's hard to see when you split things up, but you can see it in this type of format pretty easily. The unfortunate issue is a lot of systems that deploy veterinarians in this manner, they put one production lead over it, and then the veterinarian reports to the production lead, and they kind of get caught in a cycle of fighting production all the time. And they don't get to see something in another pyramid, so they're not able to learn the difference. They don't know what normal is, I guess is what it amounts to. You don't see a lot of replications of things. So another example is the stage of production deployment. That's where you split things up so you have one multiplication veterinarian. You have somebody that does predominantly sow farm work, and then you have somebody that predominantly does wean to finish work. And this really requires an assimilator role to tie all these things together. You almost have to have a director of veterinary services, somebody that can take the information from multiple veterinarians, collate all that information, get everybody engaged to communicate, and tie it all back together to actually figure out what the root causes are. I've known a lot of veterinarians that have been weaned to finish veterinarians, for example, that just get really frustrated because they feel like they have no control over what the sow farm is doing, but they think that's where the problem is. The sow farm folks, they're incredibly frustrated because they say, golly, all these nursery and finisher folks just keep killing my pigs, and I'm putting out a good pig, my production's good, and they're letting them die. And then the multiplication's disconnected again, and they just don't understand why these two can't get their act together. And it can be incredibly frustrating. So then you've got the regional approach, which is probably the hardest one to deal with. So same kind of system, and you say, well, okay, somebody lives close to that multiplication farm, we're going to give them that farm and a couple of sow farms that are close by. And then we're going to take somebody else, give them part of the flow. Then somebody else gets part of the flow, and then another part of the flow. Well, then you definitely need to have an assimilator type person to pull all this together. And a lot of those end up being contract veterinarians because it's such a small area with a small number of animals. You can't afford to have a full-time veterinarian there. Requires incredible amounts of communication to be effective. So those are sort of the designs that you'll see in most production systems. And we've already kind of alluded to some of the pitfalls. Difficult to see other production types. So if you're a wean to finish veterinarian, you can be an incredibly good wean to finish veterinarian, but you fail to learn what you need to on sow farms. You don't learn how to manage health on boar studs and multiplication farms. You don't learn good techniques for monitoring disease instead of chasing disease around on a wean finish site. So it's pretty easy to get tunnel vision. The other thing is, in a lot of these production systems, we want everything to be very standardized, right? That's the key to reducing variation, is to standardize everything. Well, when everything's standardized within a system, you don't get to see what somebody else does. How do they do things differently than what you do? And you tend to get a little bit of tunnel vision. We've got specialization of roles. It's really hard for somebody that's in just a segment of production to understand the whole big picture because they don't get to see it very often. We get compartmentalization of results, and this can be pretty frustrating. So a veterinarian and production team related to sow farms. Their goal is PSY. We've got to drive PSY. We've got to produce as many pigs as we can. Well, you got a veterinarian in the genetic side of it, in multiplication, that's all about index. They want their index to improve. We want to improve our deviation to the average index. And then you got the wean to finish guy out there. He's getting beat up for mortality the whole time. So those aren't all related, right? They can be kind of disparaging a little bit. So it leads to frustration. And then you just get some conflict sometimes. Not always do the production goals align with what the veterinary goals are. Some of these that can be pretty tough, especially lately, is around medications. So all the regulations around medications, how much medications we should be using. You know, we've got this perceived amount that we need to be using, and it's less. Don't know what it is, but it's less. Well, production folks, myself included, you know, we want to increase productivity. We want to increase average daily gain. We want to improve feed conversion. Well, I think we all know what happens when drug use goes down consistently. Some of those performance metrics aren't quite as good. So there's a little bit of frustration there that we're kind of fighting against one another. So we've got to align goals the best we can between production and the veterinary staff. And there's some variation on interpretation of guidelines too. I mean, depending upon your veterinarian, how old they are, and what their perception is of oversight and control and veterinary guidance, there can be a little bit of a gray zone there, and you'll get production folks to kind of pick and choose whose advice they use from different veterinarians. That can be frustrating, especially for young veterinarians. You know, and I think the Common Swine Industry Audit and PQA has really helped that. That's kind of aligned some of our goals quite a bit. So I really appreciate that, because back before the Common Swine Industry Audit and PQA was really well known, it was a lot more contentious, honestly. So what are some of the things that you can do to have a very positive experience as a veterinarian in an integrated system? Number one thing is to make sure, whoever you're working for, that your goals and the goals of the production system are aligned somehow. You've got to have a common ground that you're coming to. That is absolutely critical. If your goals are different, you're dead in the water. There's no way you'll be successful. It'll just get frustrating. Veterinary teams always got to be empowered. They always had to feel empowered to challenge the production team. And the opposite also has to be true. You've got to be able to challenge the veterinary team as much as you can the production team. But you've got to do that in a respectful and trustful manner. There's got to be true communal respect for one another within an effective team. And one thing that I've seen over the years, people get frustrated with consultants. So there's this role of a consultant, right? And a consultant, how long do you have to travel? Is it a 1-hour flight to be a consultant? I can't remember what the rule is, but you know, but you got to have a briefcase. That's what it is. So you're always going to be challenged as a veterinarian in a production system. Everybody is going to be challenged. And at some point in time, there's going to be a disease, there's going to be something going on, and somebody's going to say, you know what, we got to get somebody in here to fix this problem. Right? So they hire a consultant. That's going to happen. It's happened to me. It's happened to every veterinarian that I've ever known, I think, that's worked in a production system. And you see some people get really upset about that. But you know, how you handle it is up to you. And you can control that situation completely. So the second opinion is going to come. How you handle it is up to you. You need to use it to your advantage. And every consultant that I've ever worked with, if given the opportunity, they'll work through the veterinarian and help you make you a better veterinarian in most cases. So that's one thing that I think is critical, especially as a young veterinarian going into an integrated system, is to understand that challenge is coming, to own it, and make yourself better with it. And then culture is huge. And the culture is, you got to think all the time about your goals are to help the production system to get better. Align your goals with them, and just let everybody know that you really do care, that you're willing to work hard and get the job done to our common result. Integrated systems can be a lot of fun. They're really challenging. The thing I love about integrated systems is you get to see replication of problems over and over again. And if you do it wrong the first time, you might do it wrong the second time again. But eventually you're going to figure it out, and you can get pretty confident that you can fix it, right? And that means a lot. There's never a dull minute. It's always exciting. One thing I really love about integrated systems is it's truly a team approach. If you got the right team, the right culture, I mean, it's like a family that you guys can work together, and there's no problem you can't solve. Usually, there's pretty good mentorship in integrated systems. There's usually more than one veterinarian, and you can get together and learn from one another, and it's a good experience. Access to data, production staff that's going to be supportive if your goals are aligned. And typically, those are pretty tight systems. You get to be involved in the community, and it's a rewarding experience. So thinking about some newer roles for DVMs going forward, welfare, we've talked about a little bit. Huge opportunity there. I think we need to take a leadership role in welfare. We haven't necessarily done that like we should. Training production staff on advanced husbandry techniques. Antibiotic use and sustainability, this one's coming, and it's huge in integrated systems, incredibly important. And then, like myself, I've kind of moved up into a business management type role, but that's been pretty exciting to do that, to be able to look at the entire picture and see the whole thing together and put it together and then get the right team, the right culture in place. That's pretty exciting. And veterinarians are unique in that they get to see the whole picture all the time. So they're pretty well suited to moving up into this business management type role. So some opportunities for us. They're unlimited. I mean, veterinarians and integrated systems can go all the way to the top. There's nothing to stop them. There are some gaps that we need to close, though, at least for me. I'm speaking for myself. I was not very good at business management, and I'm still not, but I'm learning. Financial analysis. We need to spend more time on financial analysis in vet school, and we need to spend our time to learn those skills early in our careers. People management. Some people are great at it. Some people are not. But you can take some classes and teach yourself how to be a better people manager. And then nutrition. I mean, the best answer there is ask the right nutritionist, right? I like that that summary. Not just any nutritionist, the right nutritionist. But a lot of opportunity there as well to learn. And we're going to continue to evolve. That's the summary. But the experience you have in an integrated system, it's up to you. It's what you make it. It's a lot of fun. It's been good to me. So that's all I've got.